theyeshiva.net.
Okay, we're going to start today Be'ezer Hashem a new Maamer from Torah, from the Balatanya. It's page 238. Since tonight is Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon, so we chose a Maamer of the Balatanya on the Megillah Esther, on the pasuk Vayikach Haman as halavush ve'es hasus, page 238 on the top, the first column, or daf Kuf Yotes Amud Gimel, Kuf Yotes column 3. Vayikach Haman as halavush ve'es hasus chuli. In the story of Purim, the Megillah, there's the part of the story where Achashverosh, the king, is suffering from insomnia. He can't fall asleep. Balayla ahu nadad ashnas hamalach, in chapter 6 of the Megillah of Esther. And we know the continuation of the story. They read to him from the diary, Sefer Divrei Hayamim of the king, and he wants to know how to reward the person, Mordechai, who saved his life from assassination attempt by Bigsan and Seresh years earlier. And Haman walks in, and he thinks, when the king asks him how to honor somebody that who the king wants to honor, he thinks it's talking about, he's obviously referring to him. And that's when he presents the grandiose plan of dressing up this person with the cloak of the king, the levush of the king, placing on him the royal crown, and giving him a ride over on the horse of the king, and declaring his glory in the whole capital of Persia, the Persian Empire, which is Shushan. So the king tells him to do this with Mordechai. So the pasuk says, "Vayikach Haman es halavush ve'es hasus." He takes the cloak, the levush of Achashverosh, and the horse of Achashverosh, and he leads Mordechai, the Jew, through the streets of Shushan. Kacha ye'asa le'ish asher hamelech chavetz bikarei. This is what is done to the person whom the king wants to honor and glorify. Hine, Amr Razal, the Gemara says, this is the beginning of Masechta Saita, Daf Daled, Talmud Chacham tzarich sheyehei bo shminis shebeshminis. That's the expression of the Gemara. A Talmud Chacham, which literally means, we'll soon see what it means, literally we translate usually as a Torah scholar. I said Saita Daf Daled Amud Aleph, Saita Daf Hey Amud Aleph. Just for those who look it up, Saita Daf Hey. Talmud Chacham tzarich liyas bo shminis shebeshminis. Gasas haruach. Talmud Chacham has to have an eighth of Gasas haruach. Gasas haruach is usually translated as a sense of pride, haughtiness, arrogance. So generally, humility is a very praiseworthy trait. But a Talmud Chacham, the Gemara says, has to have a shminis shebeshminis of Gasas haruach, which means a little fraction, an eighth of haughtiness, of a sense of pride. Shenemar. It's brought in Sfarim on this, a pasuk. Kuloi sog. It's hard to understand what he means. The Parshas says over there, Kuloi sog, samach gimel. How much is an eighth of an eighth? 64, right? An eighth of an eighth is a 64th part. The pasuk in Tehillim has an expression, kuloi sog yachdav. The word sog, like the word sigim in Lashon Kodesh, is dross, dirt, filth, sediments. So if it's samach gimel, if it's a 63rd part, that's apparently what he means, then it's sog, then it's dirt. But if it's only a 64th part, meaning it's even less, if you divide it into 63, if you divide arrogance into 63 parts, and he takes one part, then it's already sog. Certainly if he takes more than one part. But if it's only a 64th part, a shminis, shebeshminis, an eighth of an eighth, then the Gemara says, Adarabba, it's a fine thing. Kulay sog. Uma'atrele, the Gemara continues. Uma'atrele kisasa l'shabulta. And he has to crown himself with this arrogance like a sasa l'shabulta. Sasa l'shabulta is the beard of a stalk of grain. On top of a stalk, it's called, in Hebrew, Rashi says, skan hashiboilus, I think he puts it. The beard of a stalk of grain. If any of you have ever been to a farm or you had a farm, so you know that in stalks of grain, on the top of the grain, there is like what would look like a beard. It's really an extra layer of husk, of chaff that protects the stalk. On top of it, it looks like hair coming down. So it's called sasa, a zaken, a beard, l'shibulta, to the stalk. That's how the Talmud Chacham should decorate himself with this 64th fraction of arrogance, like the beard to the stalk of grain. That's what the Gemara says in Sait. Lahavin hamashal kisasa l'shibulta. It's a very strange metaphor. The Gemara says, looking, first of all, what do you need a metaphor for? He has to decorate himself. With a metaphor, whenever Chazal give a mashal, it's because two things. First of all, the mashal conveys what they want to say in a very powerful way, and without it, you can't understand what they want to say, because if you can understand it, you don't need a mashal. We learned the whole Maamer about Mishalem. This is a mashal. They give a metaphor because they want you to study the grain, and then you should understand what they're saying. What do you need a mashal for? Hine betchila yashlavim ma'ui and Talmud Chacham. So for this, you have to understand what a Talmud Chacham is. What is a Talmud Chacham? Ki hine asher nikra b'shem Talmud Chacham. The reason a Talmud Chacham is called a Talmud Chacham. So generally, you'll ask somebody, what's the definition of a Talmud Chacham? So you'll call it a great scholar. So if somebody, for example, is born with a higher IQ than other people, the person also likes to learn. We call in English a bookworm. Some people are social, more social. Some people are more scholastic. They like to learn and read. So by coincidence and mazel, this person may be a great, great Talmud Chacham. They absorb a lot of information over the years, and they steig away, and they have no interests but steiging. So this person is a Talmud Chacham. Sometimes you have a person who has to work on themselves more. But generally, we understand Talmud Chacham in terms of knowledge, information, scholarship, which sometimes is due to a lot of work of the person. It's always due to work. I mean, unless somebody's born, you always have to work. But sometimes it's due to a lot of work, and sometimes for some person it comes much easier than for other people. And you really have to understand what this concept is. For example, when we speak about respecting a Talmud Chacham, kavod of Talmud Chacham, kavod of Torah, is it just the information that the person has? Or it's more than that? So he says you have to understand what a Talmud Chacham is. Ki hine ma shenikra b'shem Talmud Chacham, hainu lefi shemekabel mebchinas Hokhmah. A Talmud Chacham means a student of Hokhmah. Talmud Chacham means, not a Chacham, you don't call him a Chacham, you call him a Talmud Chacham. He's a student of a Chacham. On a simple level, it means that a real Talmud Chacham is always a student. The moment the Talmud Chacham ceases to be a student, is Talmud Chacham. The moment you graduate from Talmud Chacham to Chacham, it's Kaplishmach, as they say in Yiddish. A Talmud Chacham, he's always a student. But a student of what? Here he teaches more. It's a student of Hokhmah. He's Talmud Chacham, he's a student of Chacham. For who is, it's a little bit of a different definition of a Talmud Chacham. For who is, ha bittle b'metzias lo'erein seif. The definition of Hokhmah is what's called bittle b'metzias. Complete nullification to the light of infinity. The writings of the Arizal, it's known that the Ein Sof, infinity, is always manifested exclusively in Hokhmah. Al kein ikir inyan yichudei love and yichudei tato idea Talmud Chacham dafka. So the primary manifestation of the higher unity of Hashem and the lower unity of Hashem, which are different states of consciousness of unity, is through the Talmud Chacham. Ki b'Chokhmah shabo yishken Ein Sof. Since he's a Talmud of Chokhmah, and in Chokhmah Ein Sof dwells, so therefore in the Chokhmah in him the Ein Sof could dwell, and he's a student of that. Generally speaking, there's different faculties of the soul. The first faculty, the first conscious faculty is called Hokhmah. There's Hokhmah, then there's Bina, then there's Das, there's Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, Malchus. Generally, the soul has 10 faculties. The first one is called Hokhmah. What is Hokhmah? Hokhmah we learned a few times. It's a combination of two words. Koyach Ma. Ches, Chaf, Mem Hey. So Ches and Chaf makes up the word Koyach, which is strength or the faculty, a Koyach. And Ma means what? Ma is what? Koyach Ma is the ability, let's call Koyach the ability, to be able to ask and to say, Ma, what? That's what Hokhmah is. What's the connection to Hokhmah? Hokhmah is considered the first spark of consciousness, the first glimmer that a person has when they're looking for insight or wisdom. For example, let's say you're in a state of uncertainty in your life, in your future, in your destiny. Or you're learning a text, you're learning a shtickle gemara, whatever you're learning, and you're stuck and you don't understand it, and you learn it again and again, or you think about this again and again, and you don't have clarity. And then one moment you'll have what you may call an epiphany. It's like a lightning, like a light bulb goes off in your head, as they call it, like a lightning, like a barak hamavrik, like a lightning goes off in your head, and you're illuminated. You still didn't figure it out exactly, but that moment, that epiphany, that spark of inspiration is called Hokhmah. It's like a clarity that enters into you. You don't know where it comes from. It happens, you can never prepare for it. You could be walking in the street, sitting on a couch, somewhere completely unexpected. Boom, it just came in. And it goes out as fast as it came in, mamish like a lightning. It's dark outside, there's a lightning, everything becomes light for a few moments, and then gone. Lightning is gone. You have to take that information, or that spark, I should say, that epiphany, and then develop it, and internalize it, and crystallize it, which is how you get from Hokhmah to Bina. Hokhmah is compared to the father, who produces the seed of life, the sperm, it shoots out, and then you have the mother, is called Bina. Ema Bonim Smecha, the mother of the children. Hokhmah is called Abba, Bina is called Ima, father and mother in Zohar and in Kabbalah and in Chassidus, Sifri Machshava and Ashkafa, because the father gives the seed and then the mother takes it and it fertilizes the egg, and then it can develop into an embryo and develop into a fetus and a full-fledged child until there's birth, which represents the birth of emotions. So Hokhmah is the first spark, the first glimmer of consciousness. Where does it come from? It comes from a place that's unconscious. That's called Koyach HaMaskil or Keser, as we will see, which is above Hokhmah. What happens in order for Hokhmah to occur? What are the moments that always precede the experience of Hokhmah? And the answer is bittle. Always. Bittle. Why can't I understand what I'm learning? I can't understand what I'm learning is because the concept is too deep for me, or the situation is too complex for me. It's overwhelming. My cup contains 9 ounces. I'm talking about this cup. You put in 100 ounces, the cup can't contain it. Sorry, the cup says, gone, don't come to me. This cup could contain 8 ounces or 9 ounces of water or coffee or soda. What if the idea is 100 ounces? It can't go into the cup, as long as the cup remains a cup. The moment the cup breaks down its walls, it crumbles its walls, the walls of Yericho come down, it creates space for something that transcends it. Because this cup has walls, it has parameters that contain the water, and if you're giving me this measurement, this size, this volume, great. But if not, go to another cup. You're learning something, if you're reading something, you're trying to figure out, if you're reading something that you're very familiar with, you're not going to struggle. You don't need Hokhmah, because it fits right into your cup. But if it's new information, what do we tend to do? We tend to dismiss it, right? It's one of the challenges that some people have at this shiur, for example, like right now. Everyone is used to their Shalashudas Torah that they grew up with. So you hear that again, it goes in. You like it, you don't like it, you're bored, you're not bored. You hear new things like, where's this going? Where am I going? It takes a lot of humility to be able to open yourself up to completely new stuff. It's very, very humbling because it's also contrary to human nature. That's what Hokhmah is. Hokhmah is the complete nullification, the complete suspension of an intellectual ego. The ability to be able to say what? Absolute curiosity and inquisitiveness that opens up the brain to something that previously transcended it. You'll see, whenever there's an epiphany, the person always, right before it, was completely engaged and immersed in the concept, usually unconsciously. You're walking in the street, you don't even realize that for the last 5 minutes you've been thinking about this, but you have been completely thinking about it with nothing else, and at that moment, it came into your mind. Why did it come into your mind at that moment? Because the person has completely suspended their self, their ego, their intellectual ego, lurking, yearning, searching to be able to understand the truth. So I'm learning a Shtick Gemara, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed, I read it again and again and again and again. And then at some point, I'm thinking about it, and I don't even realize I'm thinking about it. In other words, I'm not present in the process, and then suddenly it could come in from an unconscious place. It could, because it's there, the information is already there in me. It's just unconscious, it could come in into a conscious way in Hokhmah. But at that point, it's still completely new. So that's why Hokhmah is the state of bittle. Bina already is the assertion of self. Bina is taking the idea and integrating it into your own system. When it comes to Hashem, that's why it says in Kabbalah that Ein Sof dwells in Hokhmah. Because the definition of Hokhmah is it doesn't have an ego. So therefore it doesn't have parameters to block infinity. Talmud Chacham means somebody who's always a student of Hokhmah, a student of Ein Sof. And therefore, Talmud Chacham is somebody who lives with complete bittle, with complete alignment and open to infinity. That's what a Talmud Chacham is. Yeah. Haloimid Mekaladam, yeah. Could learn from every person. The Ein Sof is represented by Keser, which is above Chachma. It's the crown. Sometimes it's called Ratzon, desire, which is beyond Chachma. Uksiv, the pasuk says, V'or panecha ki ritzisam. So he teaches here the lashon of Tehillim. Pirush yesh or shemeir leponim v'nikra ha'aras haponim v'zel ba'or panecha. We say in Sim Shalom, ba'or panecha nasata lanu, the light of your face. V'huay dei ha'ratzon ki ritzisam. There's the or panecha, the or which comes to the ponim. Ha'aras haponim by nubchines oidin sof shemeir beponim the Hokhmah lekach ki ritzisam. V'zel yoir Hashem ponav eilecha v'day lemeven. Hashem should illuminate His face to you. This is what we call v'or panecha ki ritzisam. That Keser is called Ratzon. And the or that comes into Hokhmah is this or of Ratzon. Hokhmah is called the face, the panim, the pnimius. Yoir Hashem ponav eilecha. His face should shine into you. This is where the or Ratzon comes into Hokhmah. V'day lemeven. He's not elaborating here in the concept of Ratzon and Hokhmah and Keser and or panecha. Just wanted to touch on it in order to get. This is the first foundation in the building, in the structure here. That this is the concept of a Talmud Chacham. He's Makabel. He's always a Talmud of Chacham. V'hinei inyan Talmud Chacham zeh shavei dasi ba'ava v'yira b'chachmo bittul k'nisker lehel amru shetzarich liyis b'shminis sheb'shminis megasas haruach. This is what the Gemara says, that this Talmud Chacham, a person whose avodas Hashem is with love and awe, and Hokhmah and bittul, nullification, he has to have an eighth of haughtiness. V'zeh yipalei l'chayra, which apparently this is astounding. Why would the Gemara say that a Talmud Chacham has to have a shminis sheb'shminis? It's l'chayra the exact antithesis of a Talmud Chacham. If the whole definition of a Talmud Chacham is bittul to Ein Sof, complete oneness, complete alignment, nullification of the ego to infinity, That's the definition of a Talmud Chacham. Comes the Gemara and says he needs a little bit of Gasas Haruach. For this you have to understand the metaphor. What is the concept of the beard to the stalk? The stalk, the physical stalk of wheat has moitz. Moitz is chaff. Chaff is the husk, the klipa, the shell that protects the stalk of grain. V'nikra sasa. Generally, this is the term of sasa. Sasa we described before as the beard. So on the top of the stalk, you'll have like, you know what I'm talking about? You ever saw stalks of grain? You even see a wheat field, right? And you can see it looks like a berdel on the top. Looks like there's a beard growing on the top of the stalk. The whole stalk has a sasa, which is moitz. It's called chaff. So generally, it's all called sasa because it is the protective mode, the protective layer around the actual kernels, the seeds which are contained in the chaff. Now, of course, the purpose here is to get to the seed, which is going to be grind into flour. And then the flour could be kneaded with water, and you could bake whatever you want to bake, bread, etc. But you have the sasa, v'nikra sasa, that's the moitz. V'gufa chita atzmo nikra shebelta. The wheat itself, which means the wheat kernels, that's what it means, gufa chita, the wheat kernels inside, that's called shiboilus. I'm sorry. V'gufa chita atzma, not the kernels. The kernels are inside. V'gufa chita atzma, the stalk itself, inside the chaff, is called shiboilus, the stalk. V'hinei, hachita tzaymacha saydei zrichas ha'kshemesh v'ayidei ha'kshamim kiyadu. Wheat, like all grain, like all produce, grows. You need a combination of sunlight and you need water. The miracle of vegetation is that the seeds that we plant in the soil, with a combination of air, obviously, and sunlight and water, it produces all that it produces. Exactly how it happens is quite extraordinary. But when a person plants the seed in the earth, and you have sunlight, and you have water, and you have air, of course, and you have soil, and you produce, it produces what it produces, whether it's grain, or legumes, or vegetables, or fruits, and all other forms of vegetation and produce. So you need the shemesh, sunlight. Without sunlight, it's not going to happen, and you need water, rain. But here's the problem. And this is why nature developed. Hashem created nature in this way. Because as a result of the scorching heat of the sun, which strikes, which hits on the grain, on the wheat, it would have been scorched, and it would have been burnt up and destroyed. It couldn't survive. Conversely, through the abundant moist of the rain that falls and drips on the stalks of wheat, she would rot. When something is wet, it rots, and when something is very dry and hot, it burns up. It's scorched, it's consumed. Kiyadua, as no. So therefore we have a problem. Without sunlight and water, you can't have any growth. Nothing could come out. On the other hand, with sunlight, you get the heat, you get the light, but it would also burn it up, it would destroy it. Or with rain, you get the water, but it would become mold, it would rot away. And therefore it would never be able to develop as the edible food. For this reason, that's why every stalk of wheat is surrounded and encased by a moitz. A moitz is the chaff, the klipa, the shell. Why? What does the moitz do? The moitz is essentially a guardian. It's a shomer. It protects it. That the light and the heat of the sun should not be able to burn the wheat itself. Nor should the abundance of water cause it to rot away, to become decadent. All the rays of light go through the moitz. The chaff absorbs the ferociousness, it absorbs the intensity of the heat, of the warmth. V'chol hakos hasherev, and the striking of the scorching heat. V'gam mekabel b'atzmi kol alechos shel akshamim shel yipol al achita. It also absorbs the full blunt of the rain, the moist of the rain, that it shouldn't directly fall on the wheat itself. V'ad shetigamer gidula hashmoit shomer lechita mikol eila minachem min alechos. Until it becomes ripe, until it finishes growing, the chaff protects the stalk of wheat from the heat and from the wetness. What happens when the stalk becomes ripe? It finished growing now. Now what's the next stage? Now there's a process called disha. Disha is threshing. And what does threshing accomplish? It separates the moits, the chaff, from the stalk itself. What remains is the chita itself, the wheat itself. That's why we have in the malachas of Shabbos the 39 labors prohibited on Shabbos. So the first one is you have plowing and you have planting, and then you have harvesting, right? And after harvesting, you have what's called Maamer. Maamer means you make bundles. You remember Masechta Shabbos, the Malachas of Shabbos? Maamer, you make sheaves, you make bundles, because you bring them together. And then what's the next one? Dosh, threshing. What is threshing? They used to do it with animals. Today they do it usually with machinery. After the Industrial Revolution, they introduced more machinery into the process. But for thousands of years, it was done through animals. You brought your ox or your cow or another animal, and they threshed. That's why it's called dosh. Dosh literally means to trample, to step on the grains, on the stalks. And what would happen? In the process, there would be a little bit of a separation between the mites, the chaff, and the stalk itself. This is still not enough. Then you have, after dosh, you remember what's after dosh? Zoira, winnowing. You have winnowing, and then you still have boirer, and toichen, and roikid, and then oifa, which means you winnow it. What they would do is they would now take it and throw it up into the ear, and the wind would separate the lighter part from the heavier part. So that was the next process in separating the klipas, the husks, which are protecting the wheat and the kernels inside the wheat. And then there's boirer. After winnowing, you have boirer. What's boirer? It's on the ground, but it's still mixed with pebbles and dirt, and so you have to now separate the pebbles from the kernels. Then you have grinding, toiching. When you grind it, now you have flour. Now you sift the flour, meraked, and then you have lush. You take the flour, you knead it with water, now you have a dough, and now you could bake it. As the Gemara says in Shabbos, Sidura de Pasnakat. The first 11 malachas of Shabbos is the order of baking bread. If you don't understand the process of farming produce, of farming grain, it's impossible to understand the first 11 malachas of Shabbos. Present the first stage in birur, in separating the mites. That's what he says. This is reflected in halacha, in the halachas of maiser. She'ein hachite chayeves b'maiser at sheyimareach hakeri. All grain you're obligated to tithe. Part of it, a percentage of it, has to go for tzedakah. We have 2% which goes for Terumah to the Kohen. 10% afterwards which goes for Maiser Rishon to the Levi. He also has to give 10% to the Kohen, called Terumah's Maiser. Another 10%, which some years you brought to Yerushalayim and ate it there, or converted it to money and brought it to Yerushalayim and bought things there, which allowed Jews to spend time in Yerushalayim and build up the economy of Jerusalem. And some years, the last 10% went to poor people. When does wheat become obligated in Meiser? When? At what point? If it's still growing, it's not obligated in Meiser yet. If it's harvested, it's not obligated in Meiser yet. If it's put into bundles, it's not obligated to Maaser yet. When does the obligation of Maaser begin? It's called after Miruach. You know what Miruach is? Miruach is, smoothing. The smoothing of the carry. Carry is a pile, a mountain, a heap. After you did the malachas, after processing. What's the last thing you do after you did all the processing? Which means you made bundles, and you did the threshing, and you did the winnowing, and you did the selecting, and you did the grinding, and you did the sifting. What do you do now? Before the grinding. After you did the threshing and the winnowing and the selecting, what do you do now? You make piles. And now, when you finish making a pile, how do you know you finished making the pile? You smooth it out. That's called miruach. You smooth it out. Miruach hakeri. This is called gemar malacha and halacha. You finished the processing. Now it's ready. You're ready to use. However you're going to use it. Till that point, it's not mechuyev and meiser. It's not obligated to Maaser. Miruach hakeri. V'chol zman shloi nimrach hakeri potim min ha-Maaser. Why? Mipnei ha-moitz v'ha-teven shebehem. Because it's still mixed with moitz, with the chaff and the straw. Ki ha-moitz v'ha-teven pturim min ha-Maaser. The chaff and the straw are exempt from Maaser. V'lo yoid, not only that, ela shepoitrim b'achilas aroi ad miruach ki yodua. Not only that, a person, even the Chazal allowed a person to snack from the grain, even if not achilas kva, which means to eat as a regular meal, which l'chayre you should be able to, because b'natayre it's not mechayev and meiser yet. But the rabbi said people could do it and then they'll never give meiser. But snacking they allowed. People would snack. Snacks in the olden days were not potato chips. Snacks were you took a kernel and you ate it. Feasted. Yeah. So the snack is fine. Ad miruach until it's smoothed out. V'chol zeh mipnei shamoitz eini elo shomer lechita bilvad v'rak klipa lepri. And the reason is because the moitz, even though it's very significant, it's only a shomer. It's a guard. It's a protective moat for the chita. So when the chita is not ripe, you need to have it. Without it, it won't survive. Once it's ripe, now it's time to separate. So it's like a klipa, it's like a husk for a fruit. This is not a fruit, this is grain, but it's the same concept. The banana grows with a peel and the orange grows with a peel. What's the purpose of that peel? It protects it. The moment, as long as it's in the peel, it could last for a long time. The moment you take off the peel and you leave it around for a little bit, and it becomes rotten and decadent. The grain also has a klipa that's called a moitz. V'liyois ke'inyan ha-Maaser yodua shel b'chinas kodesh ha'elyon. Maaser, the concept of Maaser, is called kodesh ha'elyon. Kodesh ha'elyon means the holiness of above. The ksiv ha'asiri kodesh l'Hashem b'chol davar. The pasuk says about Maaser behema, there was the animals that were born, and the 10th you gave also as Maaser. The pasuk says in Bechul Kaisai, ha'asiri yiyeh kodesh l'Hashem. The 10th should become holy. B'chol davar, this is true in everything. Ki gam b'pratei ha'ishtalshelus lo yesh kedusha elyon ela b'bchina ha'asiris. In all of the worlds, in the 10th level, you'll have a special kedusha. B'tam shenos tchilosan b'seifim, because the beginning is etched in the end, so number 10 is always etched in number 1 and above. V'day l'mevin, this is enough. V'liyos kain, therefore, hashras ha'kedusha b'maiser, eina ela al guf ha'pri v'lo ela klipa. V'hu ha'moitz, shurak ha'shoyme l'chita kanal. Therefore, maiser, what is maiser? Maiser is when there's a conferring of kedusha on the maiser. Terumah is holy, you're not allowed to eat it besides a kohen. Maaser Rishon goes to a Levi. Maaser Sheni is holy, goes to Yerushalayim. Maaser Ani goes to the poor person. All Maaser represents a certain element of Kedusha. The part that you give away to others, to charity, to Hashem, and so forth. So that Kedusha is chal on the gufa pri, on the pri itself. V'lo la klipa, not on the shell. V'hu ha-moitz on the shaft. Shurak ha'shoyme l'chita kanal, which is only a guard to the chita. Why? Ki ein b'chinas ha'kedusha b'davar ha'tafel k'mei ha'klipa, ela al b'china ha'pnimiyis shu gufa chita. Because kedusha doesn't dwell on that which is subservient, like the shell or the husk. It dwells on the pnimius, on the internal, on the truth. Shogufa chita, the wheat itself. Ulakach, therefore. Ad shaloi nimra chakeri. As long as the pile is not smoothened, gam hachita ptura min ha'maiser b'nei ha'moitzer b'ha. So even the wheat itself, you don't have to give maiser because it's still mixed with the chaff. Shepoitrum, it exempts it. Ki en kedushas ha'maiser shoyre b'hem mitam hanal. It's not ready yet for the holiness of maiser to be conferred on any part of it because it's still mixed in with the chitzonius, with the external part. V'dai l'mevin, this is enough for the person who understands. So in other words, since maiser represents that there is a certain conferring of holiness on the chita, even the obligation of maiser before you do it, it means that this part of the grain is now obligated, this grain is now obligated in the halachas of maiser. So there's a certain holiness that attaches itself to the food, first in potential and then in actuality. Before you separate the Terumah and the maiser, it's in potential. You didn't do it yet. But if you don't, it's called tevel. What's tevel? Tevel means tav loy, it's not good, it's not edible, because you didn't separate the Terumah. When could this obligation begin? Only once you took away all of the externals, because Kedusha will not dwell in chitzonius. You will not find holiness in externalities. Holiness belongs to pnimius, to truth, to the core, to the authenticity. And the moitz is only a hechsher, it's only a shomer, it's only external, it's not essential to the grain. And therefore, at that point, the concept of meiser doesn't yet apply to it. Once you finish what's called gmar malacha miruach hakeri, you smooth out the heap, now there's a chiyuv in meiser.
So it's a little bit more, even that kedusha will not attach itself to be tofes in something which may be wonderful, but is
right. Even the chita itself doesn't get the chiyuv meiser because it's still enveloped and encased with the chitzonius. But this is very strange. How can we have the audacity to be so ungrateful to the chaff and say it's not the ikar, it's not the primary? It's called subservient. This is the chutzpah, the ultimate lack of gratitude. Without the chaff, what would have happened to the chita? It would have been kaput, garnished, nothing. It would have never grown. It would have never developed. It would have been destroyed before it began. The whole reason it's alive, the whole reason we could benefit from it is because of the chaff. And now we look at the chaff and say, we don't need you. And as long as you're here, there's no kedusha. The greatest lack of hakaras hatoiv there is. I'm the one who brought you into the world. I took on me all the heat, pun intended. Yeah. And now you're... This is what teenagers teach you, right? I took the blood, I took the sweat, I took the tears, quite literally. I took the water, I took the heat, I took everything. For you, you should be able to develop in safety and security. Now, Baruch Hashem, you became a big boy or a big girl, you ripened. Boom! You bring the animals and you disregard me. Not only that, there's no chiyuv and meiser until the moitz is gone, until the tevin is gone. Straw, they would use either for animal fodder or for fuel, for fire. But what's the straw? The straw, what we call hay or stable, all these things, were the parts that grew together with the stalks as shomrim. Doesn't make sense. The answer is, Acha we understand the answer. The be'emes, it's not a stira. It's not a contradiction. Of course we're great. The be'emes, siba satzmicha ba'idei hamois. The only reason it grew is because of the chaff. Mipnei shemekabel ba'atzmi achayim va'alechos, because he absorbed the heat and the moisture. Ach la'achar shenigdel ha'pri ein sorech l'shayim. But you have to know when. What at some point in life has been survival, at some point in life becomes a distraction. That's the key. 10 days ago, this was vital. Without it, you couldn't live. Now it's psoilus. What's psoilus? Psoilus means It's the undesirable part which you remove. You can't eat it, you can't do anything with it. I mean, you can use it for fuel, some of it you can use for animal fodder. But when you were growing, when you weren't ripe, when you were growing, when you were developing, the mitz is called ma'atrele, a crown. A Torah means a crown. It crowns the chita. Like a crown, literally, it's a crown that protects the head. V'zeu ha-mashal, that's pshat in the mashal, the ma'atrele kisasa l'shabulta. When the Gemara says in Saita that Hamid Chacham needs a little gasus, and you have to crown yourself with it, like the chaff to the stalk. It wasn't some mashal. We were looking for some mashal of something that's around you. If the Gemara was tam looking for a mashal, the Gemara, what did you have to go to a farm and talk about stalks? Why don't you say it should crown you like clothes on the person? Talmud Chacham himself wears clothes. So just like you wear clothes, so the grain has clothes. That's not what the Gemara was trying to say. For that, you don't need a mashal. That there's things that come with a wrapper. Every fruit comes with a wrapper. Not every, but many fruits. He's talking about a specific idea. That there's the concept of kisasa l'shabulta, the hasasa ma'ateres l'chita b'bchinas makif, commission is boil el v'dal. This Maamer doesn't stop saying v'dal, v'dai l'mevin. It's enough for somebody to understand. So what do we see from here? We see from here one akuda. At one stage, something could be vital. Not only vital, it's essential for survival. It's not a nice extracurricular addition. It's essential. If the chita disregards the mites too early and says, "Verbis b'chal, I don't need you," there's nothing left. On the other hand, afterwards, it becomes an unnecessary burden. Not only an unnecessary burden, if somebody says, "This mites was so beautiful, I want to leave it there forever. I want it should remain there." What are you doing? The whole purpose of the chita is not here. It has its stages. What at one stage is a klipa, that is not a klipa, it's essential, at another time becomes a klipa, which now has to be removed psilos. And since the halachas of Maaser refer to the kedusha, the way it relates to the grain, and kedusha is always, the big principle here is that kedusha is always shayda on pnimius, not on chitzonius. Kedusha is always shayda on the core, on the inside, not on the externals. So therefore, as long as the external is here, even though it was necessary, it's not mechuyev in Maaser. You have sometimes a shatchen, brings together a chosin and a kala, and does a lot of work because it's not going so easily. So the shatchen has to negotiate with the chosin's family and the kala's family, and etc., and once and twice and 10 times and there's 20 times, and push it ahead and ahead. And then after the wedding, who moves in with them to the house? The shatchen. They say, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "I need a place to stay. And I thought this is a wonderful house." They'll say, "It's not really for you. Excuse me, I'm the one who made this whole shidduch. Without me, you wouldn't have been here today, so I'm part of it." The answer is, it's true at a certain stage. The shatchen was very critical, but then at some stage, the shatchen has to move on. And if he says, "I'm going to stay in the house forever because I'm the one who's responsible for it," everybody understands the fallacy of it. So the mites was there essentially for the process of growth. And then that itself becomes a clip. Sometimes in life, as we will see, a person had to develop certain skills in order to survive. Those survival skills were very vital. As you mature and grow up, and you could be independent, those very skills that you employed become the greatest obstacle for you to be you. And you have to throw them out. You have to throw them out. The person says, "How can I throw it out? This is how I survived." And the answer was, at a certain stage, it's how you survive. That's why you have to have compassion towards it. You don't look at the mites without compassion. You have to look at it with compassion, because this was so essential. But you have to also have compassion on the fact that now, if you keep the mites there, you're not doing what you got to do. You're keeping the chita completely not what it's for. It never realizes its purpose. Its purpose is not just to stand in a field or to stand in a granary without anything. Its purpose is to be able to extract the precious nutrients contained in it to be able to feed yourself and your loved ones. So this is the depth of the mashal that the Chazal are saying. You learn how you have to see. The Gemara is filled with mashalim like this. This mashal, that mashal. It's explaining the whole mahalach. What's pshat? A Talmud Chacham needs to have a shminis b'shminis, an eighth of Gasas Haruach, as we will continue Be'ezer Hashem.
So the whole process.
Yeah.
This is This is not running counter to his usual thesis that Kedushin Gashmias and we spent years about Kedushin Gashmias and Avodah Gashmias, and he's studying dissing Chitzonius here a little bit. The Kedush is only going to be short on Pedimi. We have a Gufa Gashmi, that's our vehicle.
No, in a Chanami, but even the Gufa Gashmi, the Pnimius of it is.
Gufa Gashmi has
the Pnimius, of course.
Sam.
The concept of the mites is chitzonius. The very concept of it. It's very raised on the etra is to be external, to absorb the brunt of the heat and the.
Good morning. What's the first paragraph? That's Yichidei Lo v'Yichidei Tov. What does that mean?
Yichudei Lo and Yichudei Tata.
It's only through a Talmud Chacham that what?
It says in Zohar that the Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad and Baruch Shem Kved Malchus Elolam Vad. They represent two states of consciousness in understanding Hashem's unity. The first is called Yichudei Lo, which means
what? Unity?
Yichud, Yichud, like Yachid, Echad, Yachid, and Meyuchad. Yichudei Lo means a higher level of unity. Yichudei Tov means a lower level of unity. So he doesn't get involved in explaining what these two types of unity are. But it represents the idea. You're not going to get to it in this Maamer, but you'll get to it one day. So therefore, so the Ein Sof dwells in the quality of Hokhmah. Because it dwells in the quality of Hokhmah, because of its bittle, because of its lack of ego, so therefore the oneness of Hashem is experienced most in the Talmud Chacham. In other words, the real definition of a Talmud Chacham is not somebody who has a lot of knowledge. It's somebody who is completely nullified in the infinity of God, without any vestige of ego. That's the definition of the Talmud Chacham. Talmud of Chacham is Makabel of Chacham. It's a little bit of a different definition of a Talmud Chacham.
I just thought you missed that point.
So he doesn't elaborate what the two levels of unity are. Bruchim Abayim. But don't quit after one day.
I'll try not to. See how we get
Bruchim Abayim.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, what would be one example of something that we get rid of?
That's a good question. We'll develop it. Yeah, we'll develop it at length.
And you asked also, why don't we get rid of it completely?
The mites?
No, is the mite supposed to be the...
Oh, that's going to be the discussion. That's going to be the discussion. Very good. So why keep even a shminish and b'shminis?
So we're not completely getting rid of it.
We're going to discuss it.
Yeah.
At some stage you don't have to. At some stage you do have to.
Presents wisdom.
Hokhmah?
Wisdom. Which thing? No, I don't know, right?
Aleph Daled Nun Yud is usually associated with Malchus.
Which is not wisdom?
It's not wisdom, no. It's kingship.
So, I was going to say, the minute the person says, I don't know, has space for wisdom. Well, I guess it's not going to work.
Oh, very good. I don't know. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome. Bruchim Abayim. Good morning and a good chodesh. Shenichnas Adam Ma'abim B'Simcha. According to many, is also other Rishon, not only other Sheni. It says in Svarim that you have now 60 days of joy. In Halacha, we have a concept called bittle b'shishim, meaning if a drop of milk falls into your cholent, and there's a ratio of 60 to 1, right? So the forbidden substance becomes nullified in the 60. So it says, Al derech haremez, that the 60 days of other to others is mavatal, all negativity and toxicity and trauma and fear and pain can get bottled in the 60 days of of the Simcha of Chodesh Adar. So I want to bless you that we should all have the courage to be able to seize the opportunity and be mevatel b'shishim, whatever you have to be mevatel b'shishim. Just throw it into the pot of the 60, and it will get subsumed, nullified, bottled. Huh?
Start singing.
In a few moments, don't worry. Be careful what you ask for. But yeah, it's always good to sing without, and even more to sing inside, to sing within. So let's summarize very briefly what we started to learn. It's a very fascinating Gemara. The Masechta Saita Daf Hey, Amar Aleph, Saita 5a. The Talmud Chacham Tzarech Sheyehei Boi Shminis Shebeshminis. A student of Torah, or as he puts it, a Talmud of Hokhmah, a student of real wisdom, should possess an eighth of holiness, of pride, of what's called in Lashon Kodesh Gasas Haruach, a certain form of, I don't like the word arrogance, but haughtiness or pride. And the chiddush of the Gemara is, as the Gemara puts it there, that this haughtiness crowns him, it decorates him, like the husk decorates the kernel. Like the sasa means literally a beard. The beard decorates the shiboilus, the stalk of wheat, and the kernel inside of it. The beard decorates the kernel inside of it. It protects it, it covers it, it crowns it inside. It's called skan. I told you Rashi brings skan hashiboilus, the beard of the shiboilus. Here you have a picture. There you have a picture. You'll see why it's called a beard. You see? It's a ganze berdel. Another picture. Another picture. That is to do PowerPoints in the olden days. Huh? There you have the zooming in. So, huh? Yeah. The ikka is the top part, because the lower part is called the stem. The stem of the wheat is hollow inside. That becomes straw. That's what straw. When we say teven, right? This is the straw, which could be used for fuel. It was used for fuel. It could be used for animal fodder and for similar uses. Sometimes people will plant wheat only for the straw. They're not interested in the food. But function historically, and in terms of talking about human need, the top of the stalk is called the shiboilus. The shiboilus is called the stalk. The bottom is usually hollow, not usually always. The top, you see, this contains kernels, and every one of these there's a seed, there's a kernel. And when you extract the kernel, you can then grind the kernel into what we call flour. And that becomes the source of all foods that come from flour, wheat flour. Bread, cake, zoynus, hamaitzi, etc. So this is called the moitz. Moitz means the chaff. The chaff is the klipa, the husk around it. Particularly, if you see here, it's like, they call it in English a bristle, I think. Bristle, right? The stalk of wheat has a bristle around it. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, bristle. B-R-I-S-T-L-E. You're an English teacher.
I know. And you're wearing a vest.
And you're wearing a vest, yeah. I believe it's a bristle. It's like, you know what they are? You know these brushes, sometimes brushes with which you wipe down parts of the house. They're made out of material. They call it bristle. So it's a pretty tough material around it. It's called bristle, and it's stiff. It's pretty tough. This is called the beard. You see here, there's hairs around it. That's why they called it skan hashiboilus, the beard of the stalk of wheat. And then you have the chaff, and inside you have, in each one of these, you have a kernel, you have a seed, which is the tachlis. That's the chita itself. And inside of it, you have primarily, the kernel itself has different parts. The greatest part is called the endosperm, I think, from which we have our white flour. Huh? Our white flour and everything that comes with gluten, l'toiv, yeah, or l'mutav sometimes.
When you're saying that the straw is the extraneous part and the beard is the more important part, is there any deeper meaning to when Paro restricted the straw?
Oh, of course. Would you expect otherwise? In Tanakh, you're asking about the straw of Parai and the Jewish people. There's a lot of significance to that. The significance to the fact, if you remember, that Esav asked his father, when Chazal say that Esav deceived his father, what would he ask him? Keitzad ma'asrin, es hamelach, ve'es hateven. How do you give tithe? How do you give meiser from salt and from straw? This is what he was talking about. Okay, now, let's remember the process. So when the Gemara says, when you want to understand haughtiness, you have to study the beard of the stalk. The haughtiness is the beard of the stalk. It's basically the husk, the mites, the chaff around the kernel. Sometimes it's called mites, it's called chaff, it's called sasa in Aramaic, which means the beard, because particularly on top you have these beards. It's like the hair that flows. It's pretty tough. It's pretty stiff. The bristle, huh? Kemoitz asher titfenu ruach, a pasuk in Tehillim. Kemoitz asher titfenu ruach means like chaff, which the wind casts away, because since it's much lighter than the kernel, so when you throw it up into the wind, or even you put it in front of a fan, today a lot of people use fans, you put it in front of a fan, right? It will blow away the lighter part and separate it. Kamoitz, like the chaff, it's very light, that the ruach, the wind, casts away. So the question the Balatanya wants to know is, why did Chazal bring this mashal? What are they out to explain to us? You could think they want to give a metaphor. So there's two things. First of all, they don't give metaphors to be entertaining. When they gave a parable or a metaphor, it was in order to elucidate the idea. It was in order, like we learned in the Maamer V'yadaita Moskva, to bring down the oil. The mashal was a lavush in order to bring out, to illustrate, to concretize the idea that it should be understood by the human brain. So therefore, the question would be, what do we gain from this metaphor? Like, what is the metaphor teaching us? If it's just a case where there's a garment around that protects, so why did they find the beard of the beard of the stalk, the beard of the stalk of wheat? You could talk about every person wearing garments, and inside there's a body. You have to say there's a psatoichen, there's some depth that they're trying to convey through the mashal. And that was the focus. Now, in order to understand this, so here you have a wheat field. You could see the wheat field. Here we just zoomed in. You should be able to see the individual process. What happens? The first thing that happens is, this is very important also, as I mentioned, for Hilchas Shabbos, because all the malachas of Shabbos revolve around, the first 11 malachas revolve around this process. The first thing you have to do is plant. If you don't plant, it can't happen. If it's plant, you have to plow. Those are the first two malachas, chayrish and zayreya. I know it says zayreya and chayrish, but the Gemara wants to know why it says zayreya and chayrish. First, you have to have chayrish and zayreya. So the Gemara says that in certain soils, you have to plow and then plant, and then you have to plow again. So that's why. But since I wasn't getting into it, we're not learning Masechta Shabbos now. So I just said plowing and planting. But I know the order of the Mishnah. You did. You made a comment, which was a good comment. I don't mind your comment. Adirab, a very good comment. Don't feel bad that you made the comment. Say the Gemara. All comments are welcome, even if they don't make sense. Certainly in your case, it made a lot of sense. All the comments make sense in their own context. So the first thing is you got to plow and you got to plant. Then it grows. After it grows, what happens? After it grows, you have to harvest. That's called kaitza, you harvest. So you harvest a bunch of these. Now you're not going to deal with each one separate. It can take you a year. So you do Maamer, you do bundles. People don't realize when they learn the malachas of Shabbos, they don't realize the logic. Because they were never in farms or fields. Even children, when they learn Mishnayos, they're sitting in a building somewhere in Borough Park or in Brooklyn, they never saw wheat. That's why it's important to see the reality, and then it becomes alive. You can understand it much better. So even these Maimonim, people learn that you have to understand the reality. If not, if you don't understand the outside, you can't understand the inside. You have to push it, see the mosh. What happens after harvesting? You make piles. You bring them together. It's called Maamer. Now comes one of the most important processes, and this is called disha, threshing. What is threshing? You could do it with your hand. You could take a flail. You could take a stick. You can even take your hand. You start punching it, basically. Disha means punching. You start punching. What happens when you punch this? What do you think happens? This is what happens. See how professional we are today? This is what happens. You start punching. Here's the beard, and the beard got emptied out. This is the mites. The guy punched it out. There's a kernel in each one. These are all filled with kernels. They all fall out. That's what disha is. You can do it with your hand, you can do it with a stick, you can do it with a broom, you can do it with a flail, as people do. You can do it with your feet. The classic case of threshing when you had a big farm, a field, was with animals. You took animals and you had them go around and around, just stepping on it, and stepping on it. When you step on it, you extract, by definition, automatically you extract the seeds, the kernels, which is the pneumius, from the mites, from the chaff. However, this is not complete yet. Why? Because this is it's still superficial. You have to go to step 2. The chaff is still mixed in everywhere. The kernels are here, but there is still psilus inside of them. The here is then what we're calling here. The bristle husks are there and pieces of the chaff. So you have the next step. They would put it today. They'll put it in front of a fan. I mean, today that if it's a big company, you'll have machines already. They would winnow it, throw it up, and that's where it says k'moitz ruach titfenu. And the ear does the job of separating, so the kernels fall back down, and the chaff flies away. Sometimes people should do it in front of a fan, and the chaff goes away. That's the next step that's forbidden on Shabbos. It's called zoyre. So you have kaitzer. I hope you'll remember this because I'm trying to explain the logic. You harvest, you make sheaves, bundles, you thresh, dosh, and zoyre, you winnow. When your child comes home with Mishnayos, Masechta Shabbos, Perek Zayin, you'll be able to help them, or your grandchild, or yourself. We always talk about the children. That's better projection. Zoyre is winnowing. That's what zoyre is. Winnow means thrown into there. So now you have the kernels. Great, you have the kernels. We're ready. No. The kernels are still usually mixed with stuff. Because you have pebbles, you have dirt, so now you have boirer. This is the classic case of boirer. What's boirer? You select, you separate. Boirer. The word birur, borur, it's all the same idea. Avodas habirurim, right? You have to do birurim. You have to clarify, crystallize, separate, remove the dirt, remove the psilus. That's also forbidden on Shabbos. Every one of these is forbidden on Shabbos because this is the process of work, the main work of agriculture. What happens after boirer? After boirer, now you have kernels. Now you're good. So what do? You make a pile, you bring them together, you can have 1,000 kernels, 10,000 kernels, you make a mountain, and then you do one last thing, you smooth it out. That's called miruach hakeri, memareach miruach. You smooth it out, it should be nice and organized, you don't want kernels all over the place, you bring it together, you make it nice. This is called gemar malach. You finish the work. You didn't do the baking yet, you didn't do the grinding yet, but you finished what's called processing of the wheat. From wheat to kernels, you're done. Now you're good. Once this happens in halacha, the status changes. It's now mechuyev in trumas and maasros. You're now obligated to give tithes. Chazal learned this out. It says, reishis degoncha, you have to give truma tithing from the beginning of degoncha means your grain. Dagan is grain. but from when Mishaz Digunoi, from when it's complete and smoothed out. Because that's Gemar Malacha, that's when it's done. Memareach. Yeah. Then comes you want bread. You need bread. So then comes the next step. You'll take a pile of kernels, you'll grind them, you'll put them in the mill, or however you grind them. Usually a mill, you need something to grind them, and basically they develop into flour. You have flour. Once you have flour, you'll do again boirer. You'll sift the flour. That's called meraked. That's the next malacha. After you grind it into flour, you want to sift the flour because the flour can also have in it psoilus. So you sift the flour. Now you have clean flour. What's the next step? Lush. Now you knead the flour with water. That's also a malacha. And what's the next step? You have a dough. What do you do with the dough? You bake it, oifer. That's it, finished. That finishes the whole section of the first 11 malachas of Shabbos. Clear, yeah? So this is the step of disha of threshing. Comes Esav, and what does Esav say? Keitzad ma'asrin es hamelech v'sateven. How do you give meiser from straw? And Yitzchak is like, wow, he's a special boy. What's so special about this question? Everybody can ask how you give meiser from straw. What's special about it is that straw is potter for meiser. Straw is exempt for meiser. Why? Because anything that's not edible for people is potter for meiser. If it's just an animal food, or it's used for another purpose, not for food, it's exempt for meiser. So as a result of that, you're not mechuyev to give meiser from teven. You can have a lot of straw. You don't have to separate any of it and give it to the kohen or the Levi or the poor person in Yerushalayim. But Esav was so frum. Esav was so holy. He was so religious. He's like, how do you give meiser from straw? As the Mefarshim ask an interesting question. Yitzchak should have said Esav. You never learned that you don't give meiser from straw. Instead of being impressive, really, you would think it would be unimpressive. How do you know that you don't give meiser from straw? He didn't say, do you give? He said, how do you give meiser from straw? Okay, it's a separate sugya.
We could say there's no mitzvah to give room.
Before Matan Torah, yeah. So now what happens is, so Tevin is potter for meiser. What's mechuyev in meiser? The kernels. But when? Only after you remove the moitz, after you remove the beard and everything. So what do we have from here? What's the conclusion? These are the facts that every farmer knows, and the Alter Rebbe points them out briefly. The facts of life as they relate to stalks of wheat, and all grain according to its own structure. Here we're talking about wheat. What's the purpose of the beard? What's the purpose of the stiff bristle? What's the purpose of the husk around the kernel? And the answer is, because in order to grow and develop, we want the seeds, we want the kernels. What do we need? The kernel requires sunlight, and the kernel requires rain. You have to have, of course, soil, carbon, sunlight, and rain. The problem is that sunlight and rain are also the greatest threats to its survival. You need sunlight. Without sunlight, you're not going to have the whole process of photosynthesis. You're not going to be able to grow. Without rain, it won't have the basic nutrients it needs to develop. But if the kernel was exposed, if the Rebbeinu Shalom would have made that the stalk grew, and you wouldn't have to go through, this is not an easy process. We go to the store today, we buy bread. It's not how it used to work. So we don't even know the people that do it. Nobody even knows. We don't appreciate the process. Today you have the end result. You don't appreciate what it takes. But if the kernels were exposed to the sources of its own nourishment, what would happen? It would be scorched by the heat. It would be burnt and destroyed by the intensity of the heat, of the sunlight, and it would rot as a result of the abundant moisture and rain falling on it. Hence, Mother Nature, coming from Mother God, has given us the husk. What's the husk? The husk is rough, it's tough, it's a hard shell, which encases, it protects, and it it stands as a cover for the kernel. Or in the case of fruit, as he says, it's the klipa, the shell that protects the fruit. And what does that husk do? It bears the brunt of the sun's rays. So the brunt of the heat hits the kernel, hits the husk instead of the kernel. And the kernel has, as we would say in English, thick skin. That's what he's made for. What else does he do? The husk also deflects the drops of water falling from the sky, falling from above. The kernel would take it all in and it would rot. When you have the husk, it takes the brunt of the heat, of the sun rays, and it deflects the water that falls on it. So the husk shields the kernel from the sun and rain, but not completely, while absorbing enough energy and moisture to sustain it and fuel its growth. It doesn't get rid of the sun and get rid of the water, but rather it gets enough. It gets enough sunlight, and that's why every one of these growths needs its leaves, which are usually the absorbance of the sunlight, and channeling enough in order to be able to sustain its growth. Then comes the day of harvest. What happens on the day of harvest? You have koitzer, the grain has ripened, or the fruit has matured, and now it's fit to fulfill its function as food. It became ripe, or as fodder, or as seed, whatever the nature of the growth is. Now the husk is not an asset. Now the husk is a blocker. Now the husk is an impediment. If you say, I want the moitz now, you're not allowing yourself to get to the next process. Therefore, it's broken open, it's peeled off, and it's discarded. Sometimes these things fall off on their own parts. Rashi says in Saita that the skana shebelis falls off on its own. Sometimes you have to beat it, and that's what we spoke about, threshing and winnowing, etc., but that's all the process. And only after that will it become mechuyev in Maaser. Why? Why? And we understand why. Maaser represents something that's the tachlis of it, the food. Till then, it's not yet edible, so therefore there's no chiyuv Maaser. So Maaser can only happen after the moitz is removed, after Gemar Malach. The Alter Rebbe wanted to understand, how could you dismiss the beard of the stalk so easily? How could you discard it? How could you turn it into psilus when it was the key of survival? It was the only way you survived. It was the hype mechutin, as they would say in Yiddish. It was everything. How do you now call it? Toffel, subservient, irrelevant, psilus, even garbage. Psilus means garbage. How do we have the audacity to do that? And his answer is, you have to look at stages. Timing is of essence. It's always about timing. When the kernel was busy developing and maturing, then to discard the chaff would mean what? It would mean destroying it, sentencing it to death, sentencing the growth to death. Not only is it an accessory, it's nice, it's extra credit, it's essential, it's vital. Why? Because of the forces of nature would destroy it, scorch it, destroy it, rot it, cause it to decay and decompose, and it would never have a chance to become what we want it to become. That's stage one. And that's when it's extremely essential, it's critical, it's indispensable, it's vital. It's vital to survive. However, once it's ripe, once it developed, once it became what it has to become, now to leave it on and say, look how beautiful, this is your crown, this is your decoration, this is your key for survival, you're actually impeding it. You're actually not allowing a person to benefit from the great purpose of why we planted the wheat, or any grain, or any tree, or any legume seed initially. And those two stages are critical to understand. In other words, what in one stage is survival and life, the key to life, in another stage becomes what? Becomes a klipa. It becomes a shell and a husk that's made to be discarded. On the contrary, it invites itself to be discarded. It looks at you and says, hey, Rabbi, I've done my job. Have a good day. The shatchin after the chuppah. I've done my job. Let's go to the next couple or potential couple. I've done. Now it's time to say goodbye. And that's what happens to the mites. It's always about stages. It's always about timing. Based on this introduction, we could now understand a little bit of the depth of the mashal, why Chazal talk about haughtiness, and they say a student of Torah has to have an eighth of an eighth, a Talmid Chacham have an eighth of an eighth of pride. We don't just say an eighth of an eighth. We say it should decorate him. Ma'atrele, it's like an ateris, a crown. It's a decoration. Kisasa l'shabulta, like the beard to the like the beard to the stalk, like the husk to the kernel, like the chaff to the wheat. Kisasa l'shabulta. Now we'll understand they weren't just giving a mashal. They were actually conveying the essence of it. And here we come to Peri Gimel of the Maamer, Vayikach Haman. And this is unique, and I'm going to say this as an intro. I want to learn in sub, but I want to say one word as an intro. One of the great tensions that people often experience is, what is the relationship between the self-confidence, let's call it the tension between self-confidence and religion? For very many people, somehow, the way they processed religion or faith or Judaism or Emunah or Yiddishkeit, whatever the name is, was as something that in their own experience and their own psyche and their own perception completely delegitimized their own identity. Whether it was their own way of understanding things, whether it was the way things were communicated to them, whether it was parenting or schooling or community or culture or different personal experiences. But in their mind, there is either you serve God or you serve yourself. And they were taught, what does it mean to serve God? To serve God means that you don't exist. And the more you don't exist, the better Jew you can be. In other words, the more you know how to beat yourself up, the more you know how to look in the mirror and say, you see this thing? This thing is nothing. This thing is really valueless, then the closer you can get to truth. Because what's the worst thing in life? The ego, the arrogance, the haughtiness, the hedonism, the narcissism, the self-centeredness. And this is true within the entire Jewish world, I think. And generally the entire world. What's the relationship between self-confidence and duty, responsibility? What's the relationship between who I am and what my calling is? To be or not to be, that is the question. Or to be not, that is the question. Particularly those who have tasted, either superficially or even more in depth, the language, the jargon of the world of Machshava and Chassidus, where there is a very charged term that's always used, and it's called bittle. Very good. Bittle. And everybody knows what's bittle. The translation of bittle in all the English translations is self-nullification. Right? It's one of the first English words we had to learn. Self-nullification. What self-nullification? Nobody still knows what self-nullification is. But it sounds like bittle. Or the concept is nullify. Nullify means to make it nothing. Obliterate it. The more bittle, we always say, the closer to God. The more bittle, the closer to truth. In other words, the more nothing, the better. The less nothing, the worse. Like chametz, bittul chametz. What's bittul chametz? You say it's ka'afridar, it's like offer. Really, we would like it to be less than offer, but it's for it to exist, so we use it offer. The Rambam has a lashon kedavar she'im b'yitzarich klal in Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah. What's bittul? Ka'afridar mamash, it becomes offer. The Rishonim say that because you look at it like offer, it becomes offer in terms of halacha. Augmented reality. You look at it like offer, it becomes offer. So if you look at yourself like offer, you'll take it become offer. And by chametz, it doesn't always work. By people, somehow it works. By chametz, the Chazal were afraid it's not going to be b'leiv shalom, you're not going to mean it. It's fart a nice bottle of brandy, and it's not really offer. It's fart, and that's why they made you do bdika and beer. But by people, somehow it works very well. If you tell yourself you're like offer, you're not going to become like offer.
But the doctor, I don't know, pizza, because then you clean the house and the wife every day.
Your wife says, you're saying your wife reinforces the message. Okay, some husbands also reinforce the message. I told you once, no? Rabbi Ezel Charif, the Slonim Mirav, his wife asked him Erev Pesach in the morning if he got rid of all the chametz. So he said, I got rid of all the chametz, but there's one piece of chametz that I've been married to for 40 years, I can't get rid of it. So she said, you don't have to worry. That chametz my father sold to a goy many, many years ago. Jener Stück chametz that my tate verkauft to a goy gomer. You really don't have to worry about that. This tension is not a simple tension. It's a sensitive one. It's a complex one. Now, I have spoken about it many times because it's fundamental. And I find it fundamental because I have found, teaching many years, that when people hear the words, they often misinterpret it based on their own experience. It's very rare that the very authors of these teachings should address this tension so blatantly. And probably one of the most explicit places where the Alter Rebbe addresses this tension is in this Maamer. So it's not just a Torah, it's a taich, it's a shir, it's a vort, it's mamash, the Maamer itself addresses it. And the reason I was so elaborative about the illustration, and the Alter Rebbe is so elaborate, he's usually not so elaborate about Mishalim with agriculture, because he relied that people knew what we're talking about, is because it's the mashal that conveys perfectly the nimshal here. It's very hard to see a mashal that is as perfect. It's mamish. Sometimes a mashal, it's a good illustration, right? We spoke a lot about Rav and Talmud, so it's not such a tangible mashal. For that, you have to have a good teacher and a good student. And how many people had such teachers, and how many people were such students? That's why the mashal of a Rav and Talmud, for somebody who had a real Rebbe and was a real Talmud, it's a great mashal. But it's still an intangible mashal. Here, you could see it with your eyes. You could see it. So even people today with ADD and ADHD who can't understand abstract mashalim, but this is the real thing. So the mashal mamash illustrates it. And the fact that Chazal, 1700 years ago, 1800 years ago, in Gemara, or 1600 years ago, in Masechta Sotah, used this mashal to define the shminis shebeshminis, shows how in that mashal they were conveying this very message. What is the message? So let's see. V'hinei hanimshal siv gimel, yeah? V'hinei hanimshal mikol zeh yuvan b'avodas Hashem. The mashal we explained. The nimshal will now be understood. V'hinei mavur l'mayla b'bchinis talmid chachem shehu hamispal ba'ava v'yireh b'pnei yizbeirinus b'chachma b'chinis bittle b'pnei shayr and sev shayr b'chachma. We spoke, what is the definition of a Talmud Chacham in its epitome? We don't call him a Chacham. We call him a Talmud of Chacham. Why? He is the person, his the Balatanya's description of a Talmud Chacham. Hamispal ba'ava v'yireh. He's moved by love and awe. Why? Mipnei yizbeirinus, because of his awareness. In Hokhmah, what does it mean, awareness of Hokhmah? B'chinas bittle. He's completely aware of the infinity, of the truth of infinity. Ein Sof is manifested in Hokhmah, in the quality of Hokhmah, which is the creative power that allows for an epiphany, a new flow of energy, and therefore it represents the complete openness to the person to that which transcends him, and hence the Talmud Chacham is moved by love and awe. V'hinei inyan hanimshal miguf achite shoysa nekusefes v'nekreves l'lei amoitz. What then is the nimshal of the stalk, of the guf hachita? Guf hachita means the core of the chita. Guf here doesn't only mean the body, it means the guf, the etzem, the core of the chita, which is that which is inside the chita. The guf means the pnimius, like the core. What's the mashal? It would have been destroyed, it would have been burnt up, or it would have rotted and become decayed without the mites, without the chaff. What is this? The Anurayim we see, Shekol Misha Maschil Ba'avodas Hashem, any person who begins serving Hashem, Ba'avodas Shebelev Zutfila, and the beginning of Avodas Hashem is always Ba'avoida shabalev zu tefillah, the Gemara says in Tainus. Ula avdoi b'cholav avchem. Ezo yavoida shabalev zu tefillah. Tefillah davening is called an avoida shabalev. Why is it called avoida shabalev? Avoida shabalev means in Herzen und mitten Herzen. It's an avoida in the heart and with the heart. But anybody who begins a real relationship with God, what is a real relationship? Real relationship with God doesn't mean talk, conversation. It doesn't only mean ritual. It starts off with avodah shebelev zu tefillah. It starts off expressed in a relationship of davening. What do we mean here by davening? We're not saying just a person goes through words. Avodah shebelev, avodah with the heart and in the heart. Anyone who starts ef shaloi. It's impossible to start avodas Hashem. I have to say these are incredibly unique words. Ef shaloi bilti yemtsos midos hagasos. You can't begin avodas Hashem if there's no sense of I, if there's no sense of what he calls in midas hagasus, which is a very coarse expression. Midas hagasus means the attribute of gasus. Gasus literally means coarseness, haughtiness, what we would call egotism. Gasa ruach is a thick spirit, a dense ruach. It's dense, it's thick. Midas hagasus. Pshat, what do I mean? Why are you saying this? Doesn't avodas Hashem mean you're serving Hashem? Not arrogant. He says, I don't mean you're arrogant in the sense that you're a narcissist. That's not avodas Hashem. That's narcissistic personality disorder, or hedonism, or selfishness. What do we mean by gasus? He explains. The person has to experience himself, make himself, understand himself as a yesh. Yesh means something. Davar ma means an existence. Mashet tzorich liyas oved Hashem. Why? To be able to tell himself that this is what I need. In other words, there's an I who has needs. There's an I who is looking for something. V'yesh mi she'oved. And there's somebody who's serving. The relationship is valuable. There's somebody here. There's somebody here. Who is that person? Me. Chuli, v'chuli, etc. In other words, there's a lot to elaborate. Ubeniyas ha'avodah yetzer lo. Preventing himself from avodas Hashem is going to bother him. Why is it going to bother him? Mipnei she'enei chafetz liyas nifred. I don't want to be separated. I don't want to be gypped from life. I don't want to be deprived of something so meaningful, of something so valuable. Enei chafetz liyas nifred. In other words, in simple English, I see my life as valuable, and therefore I want to suck the marrow out of my life. I want to actualize myself. I want to be the ultimate person who I am. I want to live my life to the fullest. I don't want to be separated. I don't want to be detached. I don't want to be empty. I don't want to live an empty life. I want to live the best life possible. I want to actualize myself. If you don't have value, if you don't think that you have value, all these equations can't come into the picture. So this is a very deep underlying premise that fuels the beginning of avodas Hashem. Hagam shezel b'chefetz v'ratzon amiti. Now this could be with true desire, a true desire. Shechafetz b'kirvas Hashem v'einei reitzeh l'israchik. Apparently, this is a very, very deep. He really wants to be close and doesn't want to be far from Hashem. Mikol makom yesh b'seh b'chinas gasus. This is called gasus. It's called haughtiness. Why? Ki nechshev be'einav le'ezeh davar. Because he's considered in his own lives, he's considered as something significant. Sheba avoidasa yiskarif. He actually believes that his life can do something. There's something real here. It's a relationship. Imagine somebody is proposing, wants to get engaged, met somebody, so they propose, right? The night before engagement, they go out to, I don't know, wherever they go out, and this person wants to propose. And says, before he says, I have to give an introduction. I'm nothing. I'm valueless. What I do means nothing. What I say means nothing. I'm an absolutely nobody. I'm sick, I'm dysfunctional, I should have been dead years ago. There's nothing to me. There's nothing significant about me. Would you like to marry me? there's something off, right? You say, why? It's a beautiful thing. A guy has no ego. He's not going to be narcissistic. Whatever she wants, he's going to do. The greatest thing she should say, of course, I want to marry you. But you'll see she's going to come home to her mommy and say, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? What's wrong with this? The best bittle in the world. I got no needs. I don't even exist. I barely exist. I was told I don't exist, and it's true. It looks like I exist in the pictures, but there's nothing there really. You call the shots. You tell me I'm a robot. The best in the world. I'm a chaya. No issues with ego. No issues with pride. No issues with arrogance. He's never going to disagree. It's a dream of every wife, no? Huh? Oh yeah. What type of experiencing are you having? We should talk.
And if the wife does,
Or the wife tells the husband, "I would love to marry. I just have to tell you something about me." I mean, not the husband yet, the potential husband. I'm nothing. I'm not even sure I exist. The best thing, wonderful. It's like being married to yourself. Shalom bayis, it's perfect. You get a tax discount, even though you never fight. It's beautiful. But everybody understands. Everybody's going to run away from this. Why are you going to run away from this? Anybody wants to answer the question? Huh?
for the attitude to live alone.
There's no relationship.
God doesn't have a relationship with nothing.
You can't have a relationship with nothing. Avoid, if a person really believes, I don't matter, I'm a shmata, and all the trauma I existed confirms the authentic truth. Ich bin a garnished, mit noch a garnished, I'm a big zero. And as somebody once told me, that somebody once told him, as a child, he said, you're a zero. As many zeros as you'll add, you're always adding zeros and zeros and zeros, and the beginning is always a zero. And what you add will always just add up to more zeros, and you can have 1,000 zeros, and it's not less zero than 1 zero. In other words, I'm building what we would call a castle out of sand, the house of cards. There's nobody here, there's nothing here. So it doesn't mean avodas Hashem. Avodas Hashem means I'm serving. That means there's value to it. Something is happening. There's a relationship. You care about it. I'm bringing something to the table. There's an eye that is valuable. The Alter Rebbe calls this gasus. We're not talking narcissism. Relationship. A relationship requires that there's an eye. Nechshav be'einav leizer davar. He looks at himself as something. Shabavaydasa yiskarif. Through my avodah, I'm going to get close. There's something valuable. And next, v'yil anachas ruach l'mayla, and God cares. He wants it. Avodas Hashem means it's anachas ruach. Anachas ruach means he enjoys it, he appreciates it. My existence means something. My decisions mean something. My life means something. That's the genesis of all avodas Hashem. My life doesn't mean anything if I'm a shmata. He says you can't begin avodas Hashem. There's nothing here, nobody here, just a traumatized robot, a lifeless corpse, a dead man walking. There's a word from the Kotzker Rebbe. So a very powerful idea. He said, "Vazei rufen prikas oil ruf ich atzvos." What many people call prikasal, what does prikasal mean? You remove the yoke of God, you're a frivolous, promiscuous person. I call depression.
The minute you don't have that, you know that.
Prikasal, I don't want God, don't tell me what to do, I'm a free person. I'm a depressed person. I want to sleep all day. I don't want to do anything. Don't tell me. I don't see real value in my life. If I don't see real value in my life, let me just... So now you want me... I should restrict myself.
If it's an opposite type of value, let's say a billionaire, he has a lot of value, but he's...
Okay.
That's your relationships.
Fine. That's the opposite. That's the opposite. But really, you're asking a person who has a lot of value but no relationships. They've just become a self-centered, isolated egomaniac. It's really the same thing. It's really the same thing. The depth of arrogance is usually the depth of insecurity. Usually the depth of arrogance is the depth of insecurity. Huh?
Why should God need that? In relationship with person to person.
You're asking a good question. Why would God need that? Okay. But for some odd, crazy reason, he created this world. So he was looking for something. However you have to explain this. Yeah. He wanted it. I didn't force him to create the world, and my mother-in-law also didn't.
So actually, you could call this.
But he wanted it. He wanted it. The whole Chumash, if you read Chumash with this perspective, whenever God says, if you don't, this, what you have to hear in it is, wow, I mean a lot to this God. Like, what? It matters. Baruch, well, I don't understand. If you're as big as they make you, first of all, relax. The basis of all of Judaism is that your life has some extraordinary value. Not just value to another person whom you can support. Value to the source of all reality, which is surprising. It's like, really? You have nothing better to do than have a relationship with me? But if I don't have that, that's what we call atzvos. It's a form of sadness, which a lot of people have in a very deep way. They may not walk around sad, but deep down, their lives don't really matter. Their lives are insignificant. And I feel that my avodah can change me. Something is happening with me. And there's an achas ruach. Ubehepech. And then I could feel the opposite also. Without avodah, there's a distance, there's a pain, there's something missing. There's the opposite of nachas ruach. And again, I'm going to use the metaphor of a marriage. Both ways. If a husband tells a wife, or a wife tells a husband before they get married, I want to tell you something about me. There's nothing you can do that will insult me. Nothing. You know why? I don't need you.
Without you.
I don't need you. I'm perfect without you. So why are you here in my house? I'm Pashat nice. I'm Pashat a nice guy. But I darf garnish nothing. A husband, wow, best marriage in the world. Can leave whenever you want, come whenever you want. But there's something off about it, right? There's something off about it. Why? I'm free. I'm free. It means there's no relationship. You can't affect me. On the other hand, if somebody says, whatever you do will never be enough. People do that. Well, never. There's just nothing. It's like pouring water into a bottomless bucket. I can tell you 1,000 times I love you. Nothing goes in. You know why? There's no floor. There's no foundation. Pour and pour and pour and pour goes right out. If the core of self is not there, you could pour and pour and pour and pour, and nothing stays. Why? There's nothing there. When you say, I love you, I don't believe there's a you. I don't believe I exist. That means when you're saying I love you, you can't mean it, because you also know that I don't exist. That means you're lying to me, so now I hate you even more. Which is why sometimes the people who are kindest to us become our greatest enemies. Because we can't believe what they're saying is true. Because I'm such a nobody, it's impossible that you love me. And if you love me, you're really bad. I can't trust you. You really make bad decisions. You're manipulating me. You just want, so you want my money because I have a Yerusha. And that's it, and we cut off relationships. Why? Because I'm processing everything through dysfunctional thoughts. Which is normal, by the way, as long as you identify it. As long as you can laugh at yourself and say, wow, that's funny. Person came to me, tried to help me, and they became a criminal in my own eyes. As long as you can identify it and then laugh and say, I'm pretty traumatized, then you're good. Then you're good. Then you're doing bittle. That's what bittle is. We always speak about bittle. Bittle is, you identify. This is psilus, this is not. Bis typhus? Good stuff, yeah? The basis of life, the basics of life. You wonder why they didn't tell this to you when you were 6? Huh? What'd they tell you the opposite? However we define the need, it's an important shir. What does it mean Hashem needs? But the words he uses is l'nachas ruach l'mayla. It's cherished. It's cherished. He created a world. However we understand and explain. He says, this is the haschala of all avodas Hashem. There's no avodas Hashem without this haschala. You're Shevat. In other words, if there's no tzuras Adam, if you're not an Adam, if there's no tzuras Adam, if you don't look at Moida ani lefanecha, Moida ani lefanecha. I start with Moida, but who's Moida? Ani. If the ani is a shmata, piece of garbage, a lowlife, a piece of filth, stay in bed. That's what people do. They stay in bed. So the Paidakal, you're Paidakal. Because you're not a Paidakal, you're depressed. Wrong diagnosis. Paidakal, you're staying in bed. He's not a Paidakal, he's depressed. There's nobody to get up. Who do you want should get up from bed? You need somebody to get up bed. You want the mattress to stand up? You want the mattress to have Tchiyas HaMesim? He's part of the mattress. You know, some people, they click onto the mattress. They become the chefs of the mattress. Who do you want should get out of bed? The mattress? He became a mattress. That's what he is. That's not prikas oil. It's atzmos. And if you don't address it, you're not addressing what's going on. There's nobody to get up. Who should get up? A loser? Why should a loser get up? To lose again? You don't stand up to lose. You stand up to win. You have to win, you have to lose as a winner, not as a loser. You understand what I'm saying? The antidote to atzvus is to come to these shiurim. Okay.
It's okay to teach, but it's not easy.
Yes. We're not getting into the question how Hashem needs. That's a good question. There's a lot of ways of explaining it.
Me, they kept saying that the more I'm good, nothing works. That's the answer. Not connect more. Go away.
Right, so whenever anybody connects based on their not being good, it's not a real connection. You understand?
Not even that. It's an answer. It's an easy way to do. To become like consciousness, to become more.
Yeah. I tell you, since you're such a nothing, so the only way is connect to me. So what happens? You don't connect to me. I just control you. So you become an Eved Avodim. Because you're a nothing, therefore connect to me. I'll protect you. I'll turn you into something. So then what happens? You become a complete victim. I'm like a dictator. That's not a relationship. It's an Eved. Huh?
Evet Avodah Zarah. It's
That's what Avodah Zarah does.
But the real kings that didn't work that way.
Depends what type of king. The normal king had to have more humility than anybody else. The Gemara says in Brachas Tav Chav Beis that when a king davens Shemona Esrei, says Baruch Atah. So by Hashem we lift up our heads, Baruch Atah, and it stays up. The king had to go Baruch Atah and stay down till the end of Shemona Esrei. The king, only the king. If you came into a shul, yeah. And Shlomo Melech was davening, so to speak. I mean, they didn't have Shemoneh Esrei yet. But I'm just giving a mashal, yeah? Everybody would be Azai, and he would be all the way down. Why? Where's the covered? The answer is fakert. Because he has so much power, he has to have much more humility. Because if not, it's dangerous. HaMelech, the Gemara says, Kivon shekara shuv einei zoikev. He need,
They do a full Shtachavaya or just
No, Kara, kneels or bows down, Shuvay Nezoik, if he doesn't pick up his head till the end of davening. Why? The Rambam says in Ilchas Malachim, Keshem that the Melech has to be exalted and respected, he has to be a Shval Ruach, he has to be very humble.
what does that mean? So
Even in Bayis Sheni, they had Malchi Chashmonayim, all the Malachim. Whoever the Melech Yisrael was, when he bows down, he has to stay down. Because a Melech needs more bittle, more avdus. If not, it's dangerous. The king is not above the law. The moment the king is above the law, he's not a king, he's a dictator. That's the beauty of Malchus by Yiddishkeit. David HaMelech did something, right? Nasan HaNavi came to him. The prophet spoke truth. David HaMelech didn't say, kill Nasan HaNavi. Another king, you come into the king and you said, why'd you sin? You go out with a head shorter. Go into Achashverosh and tell him, why'd you sin? You go out with a head shorter. A king is not above the law. It's a revolutionary idea. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Oh, I said, even the way the authorities started, and the Rabbi Yashir is the first thing that you are nothing. You need something important to be a Rabbi.
You're saying that every authority you knew, the beginning was, I'm everything and you're nothing. Yes.
I'm in charge.
And that's one of the greatest mistakes in education. It's one of the greatest mistakes in education. It's a traumatizing error, and it often results in catastrophic consequences. I mean, there's kids with tough skin, so they survive because they have a good mites, they have a good shaft. But what? This is going to be the whole Maamer. What if the kernel is not developed yet, and you get rid of the mites? What's geshet? There's nothing left. There's no seed left. You burnt up the seed, or you made it rot. And we'll see what those two things mean. But that's what happens because the kernel is not developed. Unless if people sometimes come from a good house, or the mother gives it, the father gives it, is also helpful. But when they have neither, and the definition of authority you're saying is, I'm everything and you're nothing, then it's actually taking away from the experience tremendously, besides the negative results. It doesn't even add to respect. There's no respect, there's nobody here, it's just...
So to say a lot of Hasidic kids, the way they grew up, this was actually helping them further in life, in business or anything else. They had this chutzpah that because they got knocked down so many times, they picked themselves up in their own way, in their own level.
That's the tough people.
The tough people. You're saying those who survived became real estate magnates. Yeah, but however, but with their children, they usually go back to what they experienced because that's what they know.
Then they have a thick husk that never get rid of it. So yeah, they continue being.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.